She said I was too emotional to teach, then told everyone I was dangerous, planted substances in my classroom, and had me arrested in front of my students. When I finally asked her what I did to deserve this, she laughed and said, "You got in my way." I stayed silent. That was 10 weeks ago. This morning she was removed from the courtroom screaming. I was checking my phone outside Macy's when I heard the screaming. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, was on the ground near the fountain, hitting his head against the concrete. His mother was trying to hold him, but he kept pulling away, his face red and twisted in distress. My interview at Starbucks was in 15 minutes. I'd been unemployed for 8 months since the district eliminated special education positions. My savings were gone and my landlord had given me 1 more week, but something made me stop. The male security guard was already on his radio and people were filming. I recognized the self-injuring behavior immediately. I'd seen it countless times in my classroom from other kids with Down syndrome. I dropped my bag and sat on the ground about 3 feet away. "Hi," I said to the mom. "I used to work with kids, can I help?" She nodded desperately, tears streaming down her face. I noticed the boy kept looking up at the skylight where the sun was creating harsh shadows. I pulled out my phone and opened an old teaching app, a simple color wheel that shifted slowly between hues. I placed it where he could see it. "Look," I said softly. "Blue, now green, now purple." His hitting slowed. I started humming a repetitive 3-note pattern I'd used with my students. After about 10 minutes he was sitting up watching the colors. His mom was finally able to hold him. "The lights and shadows," she whispered. "He can't process them." I stayed for 30 minutes until he was completely calm. By then I'd missed my interview. Starbucks wouldn't reschedule, but for the first time I felt like everything would be okay somehow. And 3 days later I got the call. The woman introduced herself as Lauren. It was the mother from the mall. She'd convinced security to share my contact information. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I run the largest developmental therapy center in the state. We specialize in Down syndrome and other developmental disabilities. I've never seen someone de-escalate behavior that effectively." I almost laughed. 8 months of rejection and now this. She asked if I had experience with special needs children, and that's when I told her I had a master's in special education, but I was fired because they said I was too emotional for the job before replacing me with a man who had less qualifications. She insisted on meeting me and I agreed. When I walked into Bright Horizon Center, I was stunned. Sensory rooms, one-on-one therapy spaces, adaptive technology everywhere, nothing like the underfunded classroom I'd lost. "We've been looking for a lead teacher for months," Lauren said. "Starting salary is $85,000, full benefits." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. But here's where it gets crazy. My second week, a 4-year-old named Marcus enrolled, nonverbal with a history of aggressive behaviors. His previous daycare had expelled him after he drooled on all the tables. His parents were desperate. His mom hadn't been able to work or receive respite in 2 years. During his first day, I noticed him tapping a pattern: pinky, ring, middle, pointer, thumb, repeat. When he started getting agitated, instead of restraining him, I mirrored his tapping on the table. He stopped, stared at my hand, then smiled. We talked through tapping patterns for the next hour. Lauren watched from the observation window. That afternoon she called me in. I thought I'd overstepped. Instead, she said, "Would you consider getting certified in our proprietary communication method? I'll cover all costs. You have instincts we can't teach." 6 months later, I developed our nonverbal communication program. Marcus now uses a tablet to communicate and hasn't had an aggressive incident in months. His mom went back to work as a cardiac nurse. Last week she brought me coffee during my break. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I was at that mall the day you helped Lauren's son. I saw everything. I was actually planning to take Marcus to a residential facility. I'd given up on finding help." She pointed to the playground where Marcus was playing with 2 other kids using his tablet to tell them about dinosaurs. She told me that I had given her hope, that there were people out there who'd see her son as more than a diagnosis. I felt the same fulfillment in my heart that I had been craving ever since I was fired. That's when she reached into her jeans and pulled out a big black envelope. Inside was a thank you card signed by 15 families. My tears stained the page. Everyone was telling me how I had saved their families. From there, everything was smooth sailing. I thought I had found my people until I was a few months in. One of the nonverbal kids was waiting for his mother to collect him, and Lauren was the only one in the room keeping him company. I heard what sounded like a glass fall over and peered through the window. I giggled. The kids can be clumsy sometimes. I expected Lauren to laugh too, or at least grab a paper towel, but instead she slapped him on the elbow. "You're an effing waste of space," I heard her mutter under her breath, her face twisted in disgust. I froze right there in the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought she might hear it through the door. I quickly pulled out my phone and started recording through the window. Lauren grabbed the kid's arm and yanked him toward the paper towels. The boy started crying silently, which made my stomach turn. Kids don't cry silently unless they've learned that making noise makes things worse. I kept recording for another minute until Lauren turned toward the door. I shoved my phone in my pocket and pretended to be checking the bulletin board. She came out with the boy, all smiles and sweetness. She even ruffled his hair as his mom arrived. I wanted to throw up. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying what I'd seen. The way she'd switched from cruel to caring in seconds, the practiced ease of it. This wasn't her first time. I watched the video over and over, making sure I'd really seen what I thought I saw. The slap was clear. Her words were clear. By morning I decided to document everything going forward. The next few days were normal on the surface. Lauren praised my work at staff meetings. She brought donuts for everyone. She even gave me a bonus for developing the communication program. But I started noticing things. How she always volunteered to stay late with kids whose parents ran behind. How certain children flinched when she entered the room. How she had keys to every space but never let anyone else have them. I tried to stay close whenever she was alone with kids. I made excuses to walk past rooms where she was working, but she started noticing. One afternoon she cornered me in the supply closet. She said I seemed stressed lately and maybe I was taking on too much. Her tone was friendly but her eyes were cold. I mumbled something about just being tired. She suggested I take a few days off. It wasn't really a suggestion, but I couldn't take time off. Not when kids might be getting hurt, so I kept showing up, kept watching. That's when things started getting weird. My lesson plans would go missing. Parents started getting emails from my account that I didn't send, saying their kids needed extra costly sessions. When I checked my sent folder, the emails weren't there. Lauren would mention concerns parents had shared about me, but when I asked the parents directly, they had no idea what I was talking about. Then came the staff meeting from hell. Lauren announced she was implementing new oversight procedures. She said there had been some concerns about consistency in teaching methods. Everyone would now need to submit detailed reports for every interaction with children, and all one-on-one sessions would need pre-approval. She looked right at me when she said it. The other teachers seemed confused but went along with it. I realized she was building a paper trail against me. I started documenting everything in a notebook I kept hidden in my car. Every weird interaction, every missing document, every time a parent mentioned something that didn't match reality. Lauren's behavior got more erratic. She'd schedule mandatory meetings for me during my lunch breaks. She'd question every decision I made with the kids. She'd stand outside my classroom watching through the window, taking notes on a clipboard. One day, Marcus' mom pulled me aside. She said Lauren had called her, suggesting Marcus might benefit from private sessions with her specifically. The cost was triple our normal rate. When the mom questioned it, Lauren implied I wasn't giving Marcus enough attention. The mom didn't buy it, but it showed me Lauren was trying to turn families against me. I knew I needed more evidence. The video I had was bad, but one incident might not be enough. So I started paying attention to Timothy, the boy she'd hit. He'd developed new behaviors. He'd stopped using his communication device. He'd hide under tables when certain staff members entered the room, but only around Lauren did he go completely silent and still. 3 weeks after the first incident, I was filing paperwork late when I heard voices from the sensory room. Lauren was in there with a girl named Emma who had just started at the center. I crept closer and peered through the crack in the door. Lauren had Emma's favorite toy, holding it above her head while Emma reached for it desperately. Lauren kept pulling it away, making Emma more upset. Then she shoved Emma backward onto the mat, not hard enough to really hurt but enough to scare her. Emma started crying and Lauren mocked her, imitating the crying sounds. I recorded the whole thing on my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. When Lauren finally gave Emma the toy and opened the door, I was already down the hall pretending to organize supplies, but she saw me. Her eyes narrowed and she walked over slowly. She asked what I was doing there so late. I said I was catching up on assessments. She reminded me that overtime wasn't approved. Then she smiled this cold smile and said we should probably review my employment contract together soon. That night I backed up both videos to 3 different cloud services. I used my personal laptop at home, not trusting the work computers. I also started researching who to report this to. The center had a board of directors, so that seemed like the logical place to start. I found their contact information on the website and started drafting an email. But the next morning, Lauren called me into her office first thing. She had papers spread across her desk, incident reports with my name on them that I'd never seen before. She said there had been complaints about my emotional volatility. Parents were concerned I was too attached to certain children. She mentioned my previous termination, how the district had concerns about my emotional regulation. She said she wanted to help me succeed, but needed to see improvement. I knew these reports were fake, but they looked real. They had dates and signatures. They referenced specific incidents that had been twisted, like when I'd comforted Marcus during a meltdown. The report said I'd been inappropriately physical with a student. When I'd advocated for Emma to have a different lunch option due to sensory issues, the report said I'd undermined nutritional protocols. I tried to stay calm. I asked to see the original complaints from parents. Lauren said that was confidential. I asked which parents had concerns so I could address them directly. She said that would be inappropriate. Then she slid a performance improvement plan across the desk. I had 30 days to show improvement or face termination. I signed it because I needed time. But that afternoon, I sent my email to the board with the videos attached. I explained what I'd witnessed and my concerns about child safety. I hit send and felt a mix of relief and terror. 2 days later, Lauren called another meeting. This time she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit sat beside her. She introduced him as Douglas Chen, legal counsel for the center. My stomach dropped. Douglas looked at me with cold eyes and said they'd received my email to the board. He said my accusations were serious and unfounded. He said recording children without parental consent was a violation of privacy laws and center policy. Then Lauren dropped the bomb. Douglas was her brother, different last names because she'd kept her married name after divorce. He was also president of the board. My complaint had gone straight to him. He said they could pursue criminal charges for the recordings, or I could resign quietly with a neutral reference. I had 24 hours to decide. I left that meeting feeling like I'd been punched, but I wasn't giving up. Those kids needed someone to fight for them. I spent that night researching privacy laws. In our state, recording was legal if you had reasonable suspicion of abuse. I printed out the statutes. I also started reaching out to parents I trusted, starting with Marcus's mom. When I told her everything, she went pale. She said Marcus had been having nightmares recently. He'd started hitting himself again during bath time. She thought it was regression, but now she wondered. She asked if I had proof and I showed her the videos. She cried. Then she got angry, really angry. She said she was a mandated reporter at the hospital and this was clear abuse. Together we started carefully reaching out to other parents. We had to be subtle because Lauren had eyes everywhere. We'd meet at coffee shops or parks, never discussing it at the center. More stories came out. Kids who'd suddenly become fearful, unexplained bruises, behavioral changes after private sessions with Lauren. One mom, Nancy, said her daughter had started wetting herself again after being potty trained for a year. It started right after Lauren began working with her individually. Within a week, we had 7 families willing to speak up. But then Lauren struck back. She called a staff meeting and announced new security measures. There had been concerns about confidentiality breaches. All staff phones would now be locked in a cabinet during work hours. Security cameras were being installed in every room for child safety. She looked right at me when she said it. The next day my key card stopped working. Maintenance said it was a glitch, but it took 3 hours to fix. When I finally got into my classroom, things had been moved. My desk drawers were open. My personal items had been searched. Nothing was missing, but the message was clear. Lauren wanted me to know she could get to me anytime. Then the rumors started. Other staff members began avoiding me. When I asked Lisa, another teacher, what was going on, she said Lauren had told everyone I was having a mental health crisis, that I'd been making false accusations because I was jealous of Lauren's success, that my previous employer had shared concerns about my stability. Some staff believed it, others seemed unsure but didn't want to get involved. My 30-day improvement period was hell. Lauren nitpicked everything. She'd observe my classes and write up reports about tiny infractions, using the wrong color marker on the schedule board, letting kids choose their own spots at circle time instead of assigned seating, being 2 minutes late from break because I was comforting a crying child. Each write-up went in my file, but I kept collecting evidence. Marcus' mom had the brilliant idea of putting a small voice recorder in his backpack. Legal because she was his parent and it was his property. Other parents did the same. We started getting audio of Lauren when she thought no one was listening, calling kids stupid, threatening to take away lunch if they didn't stop crying, making fun of their speech impediments. 2 weeks before my 30 days were up, Lauren made her big move. She called me in and said medication was missing from the medical supply cabinet, ADHD meds that were kept for emergency doses. She said only senior staff had access, which meant her, me, and the nurse. The nurse was her cousin, so guess who became the prime suspect? She said they'd have to involve the police unless the medication was returned immediately. I knew I'd been set up. I'd never even opened that cabinet, but I also knew it didn't matter. She held all the cards, or so she thought, because what Lauren didn't know was that one of the parents in our group was a former detective. Nancy's husband, Gary, had retired from the force but still had connections. He said what Lauren was doing was criminal, not just the abuse but the fraud, the false reports, everything. Gary helped us organize everything properly. We created a timeline. We catalogued evidence. We had 8 hours of audio recordings by then. We had my videos. We had documentation of behavioral changes. We had the fake incident reports that didn't match reality. He said we needed one more thing, something that would prove Lauren was systematically doing this, not just having bad days. That's when I remembered something. Lauren's office had a scheduling book where she tracked her private sessions. She'd mentioned it once, saying she liked paper records for certain things. If we could see that book, we might be able to match the timing of sessions with when kids' behaviors changed, but it was locked in her office, and she wore the key on a lanyard around her neck. Marcus' mom had an idea. She scheduled a meeting with Lauren to discuss adding more private sessions. While they met, I created a distraction. I pulled the fire alarm, everyone evacuated, including Lauren. In the chaos, she left her keys on her desk. Mucka's mom grabbed the scheduling book, took photos of every page with her phone, then put it back. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. The book was a gold mine. It showed Lauren had been scheduling certain kids for private sessions way more than others, always the non-verbal ones, always when parents were desperate, always at premium rates. We cross-referenced with behavioral incidents and found a clear pattern. Kids always regressed after multiple sessions with her alone. We were preparing to take everything to the police when Lauren escalated again. She announced that due to the medication theft, all staff would be subject to random substance tests. Anyone who refused would be terminated immediately. She scheduled mine for the next morning. I knew she'd find a way to make it come back positive. Gary said to take the test, but demand a split sample that could be independently tested. The night before the test, I couldn't sleep. I was parked outside a 24-hour pharmacy at 2:00 a.m. stress-eating donuts. When my phone rang, it was Timothy's mom. She was sobbing. Timothy was in the hospital. He'd had a severe panic attack at home and started hitting himself so hard he gave himself a concussion. The trigger, his mom had mentioned he'd be seeing Lauren tomorrow for a session. That was it. I was done playing Duffuncer. I drove to the hospital and found Timothy's mom in the waiting room. I told her everything, showed her the videos, played her the audio recordings. Her face went from shock to rage to determination. She said Timothy had tried to tell her something was wrong, but she couldn't understand his limited signs. She thought he just didn't like therapy. By morning, we had 9 families ready to go to the police. But first, I had to take that substance test. I arrived at the center to find Lauren waiting with a testing kit and a nurse I'd never seen before, not her cousin. I demanded a split sample. The nurse looked confused but agreed. Lauren's face tightened, but she couldn't object without looking suspicious. While waiting for results, I went to my classroom, but my key card wouldn't work again. Lauren appeared immediately, saying there had been more concerns about my behavior. She was suspending me pending investigation. Security would escort me out. I needed to surrender my keys and couldn't take anything from my classroom. As security walked me out, I saw Muckers at the window. He was tapping our pattern on the glass. I tapped it back on my leg where Lauren couldn't see. His mom picked him up early that day. In fact, 5 families pulled their kids out that afternoon. Lauren started making frantic phone calls trying to figure out what was happening. That evening we filed a formal police report. 9 families plus me with binders full of evidence. The detective who took our report said it was one of the most organized cases she'd seen. She said they'd start investigating immediately. She also said I should be careful. People like Lauren don't go down without a fight. She was right. The next morning I was arrested at my apartment. The charges, theft of controlled substances and violation of patient privacy. Lauren had filed a complaint saying I'd stolen both medication and confidential files. The police were apologetic but had to follow procedure. The detective from our report wasn't there. Different department, different case. I spent 6 hours in holding before Mucker's mom bylaid me out. While I was locked up, she'd been busy. She'd called every news outlet, though none were interested yet. She'd contacted the state licensing board. She'd reached out to advocacy groups. She'd even found other families whose kids had left the center suddenly over the past 2 years. But the best part, while I was in jail, Muckers had done something incredible. During his session that morning before his mom pulled him out, he'd used his tablet to record Lauren. She didn't know his device had that capability. He'd captured her telling another staff member that she'd planted the medication in my car and the police would find it soon. He'd sent the recording to his mom's phone using the communication app I'd taught him. His mom immediately took it to my lawyer, a friend of Gary's who'd agreed to help pro bono. The lawyer marched into the police station and played the recording. The charges against me were dropped within an hour, but Lauren didn't know that yet. She was still at the center, probably celebrating her victory. The next day I got a call from Nancy. She'd been doing research on Lauren's background. Turns out Lauren didn't have any degrees in child development or special education. Her credentials were forged. She'd been using her sister's license and credentials. Her sister Jessie had been a respected therapist who'd moved abroad years ago. Lauren had used her absence to steal her professional identity. We added this to our evidence pile. The detective on our case was building a solid case, but warned it would take time. Meanwhile, I was blacklisted from every therapy center in the state. Lauren's brother had sent letters to all of them saying I was under investigation for theft and child endangerment. Even though the charges were dropped, the damage was done. But the families stuck by me. They started a petition. They wrote letters. They showed up at board meetings demanding answers. The local news finally picked up the story when 15 families protested outside the center. Lauren tried to spin it saying I'd manipulated vulnerable parents, but then more families came forward, 20, 25, 30. The investigation revealed so much more than we'd found. Lauren had been billing insurance for sessions that never happened. She'd been charging parents for specialized equipment that was never purchased. She'd been writing off personal expenses as therapy supplies. The financial fraud alone was in the hundreds of thousands. When the police finally arrested her, she tried to run, literally. She got in her car and tried to leave the state. They caught her at a rest stop 50 miles away. Her brother was arrested too for conspiracy and fraud. Turns out he'd been helping her cook the books and threatening families who asked too many questions. The trial took 8 months. I testified for 3 hours, showing videos, playing recordings, explaining how she'd manipulated everyone. The families testified too. Muckers used his tablet to tell the judge how scared he'd been. Timothy's mom showed medical records of his injuries. Emma's parents brought developmental assessments showing her regression during Lauren's care. Lauren was convicted on all counts. 15 years for fraud, 10 for child abuse, 5 for conspiracy. Her brother got 7 years. The center was shut down permanently. The building was sold to pay restitution to families. During the trial, something amazing happened. The families had become a tight-knit community. We'd supported each other through the worst experience of our lives. When it was over, Mucker's mom approached me with an idea. What if we started our own therapy program? Something small, transparent, with parents as partners. I used my settlement from the wrongful arrest to rent a small space. Nothing fancy, just 3 rooms in a strip mall, but it was ours. Mucker's mom, the cardiac nurse, became my business partner. She handled the medical side while I developed programs. We made everything transparent. Parents could observe every session. We recorded everything with parental consent for review and training. 6 months later, we were serving 20 families. Word spread about our approach. Parents drove from hours away. We hired 2 more teachers, both carefully vetted with real credentials. We created a parent board that had actual power, not just advisory roles. We published our finances monthly. No secrets, no locked doors, no private sessions without observation. The day we celebrated our first anniversary, I got a call. My old school district wanted me back. The superintendent himself called to apologize. They'd realized their mistake and wanted to offer me a position with a promotion and raise. I thanked him politely and declined. I'd found where I belonged. Last week, Muckers graduated from our program. He's starting mainstream kindergarten with support. He typed a speech for his graduation ceremony. In it, he thanked me for teaching him to communicate, but said the most important thing I'd taught him was that his voice mattered. His mom cried, I cried. Even Gary, the former detective, got misty-eyed. Timothy is thriving now. He uses sign language and a communication device. He hasn't had a self-injurious incident in months. Emma is back to her bubbly self, though she's still working through some trauma with a real therapist. All the kids are healing slowly but surely. Lauren is serving her time in state prison. I heard through the legal grapevine that she's been denied every appeal. Her brother was disbarred and is serving his sentence at a different facility. The other staff members who enabled her faced their own consequences. Some lost licenses, others just disappeared from the field entirely. Sometimes I think about that day at the Mall, how different everything would be if I'd just gone to my Starbucks interview. But then I look around our little center, at the kids learning and growing, at the parents who trust us with their most precious gifts. And I know I ended up exactly where I was meant to be. The path was horrible, traumatic, and nearly broke me. But it led me to these families, to this purpose, to a career where I make a real difference. We're expanding next month, taking over the empty space next door. We've got a waiting list of 50 families. Marcus' mom and I are developing training programs for other centers that want to adopt our transparent model. We're writing a book about recognizing signs of abuse in nonverbal children. We're building something that will last long after we're gone. The best part, every single day I get to watch kids find their voices, whether through tablets, signs, or picture cards. They're learning to advocate for themselves. They're learning that adults should listen to them, protect them, help them grow. They're learning what Lauren tried to steal from them, that they matter, that they're valuable, that they deserve respect and love. That's the real victory, not the conviction or the settlement or the successful business. It's the kids. It's always been about the kids. The next morning I woke up to 53 missed calls. My phone was blowing up with texts from parents. Lauren had sent a mass email at 3:00 a.m. to every family in our database. She claimed I was running an unlicensed facility and putting children at risk. She said she was reporting us to state authorities, and any parent who kept their kids enrolled would be investigated for neglect. I threw on clothes and drove to the center. Parents were already there, some crying, some furious. Marcus' mom was trying to calm everyone down, but it was chaos. Gary showed up with printouts of the email. He pointed out that Lauren had sent it from prison, which meant she had illegal phone access. That was a federal crime. We spent the morning in damage control mode. I showed parents our licenses, our insurance, our state certifications. Everything was legitimate and up to date. But some families were spooked. 3 pulled their kids immediately. They couldn't risk any investigation, even a fake one. I understood, but it still hurt. By noon, a state inspector showed up. Someone had called in an anonymous complaint about unsafe conditions. The inspector walked through every room, checked every document, interviewed staff and parents. She found nothing wrong because there was nothing wrong. She actually complimented our safety protocols, but the inspection took 6 hours and disrupted the entire day. That night I got a call from an unknown number. It was Lauren's cousin, the nurse from the old center. She said Lauren had friends on the outside who owed her favors. She said this was just the beginning unless I agreed to write a letter to the parole board supporting early release. I recorded the call and hung up. The harassment escalated quickly. Our center's windows were broken 3 times in 2 weeks. Our sign was spray-painted with horrible words. Someone called in fake bomb threats that forced us to evacuate. The police increased patrols but couldn't catch anyone. Parents started asking if their kids were safe. Then Marcus' mom had an idea. Her hospital had top-notch security cameras they were upgrading. They donated their old system to us. Gary helped install cameras covering every angle of the building and parking lot. We also hired Alexander, a retired military guy who needed part-time work as a security guard. He mostly played board games with the kids, but his presence made everyone feel safer. 2 weeks later the cameras caught everything. 3 people in hoodies breaking our windows again, but this time we got clear faces. One was Lauren's cousin, another was her former assistant from the old center, the third was someone I didn't recognize. The police arrested all 3 the next morning. The cousin flipped immediately. She told police everything about Lauren's network on the outside, how she was using a smuggled phone to coordinate harassment, how she'd promised people money from hidden accounts if they helped drive me out of business. The police raided Lauren's cell and found 2 phones, lists of contacts, and detailed plans to destroy our center. Lauren got another 5 years added to her sentence for conspiracy and witness intimidation. Her cousin got 18 months. The others got probation and restraining orders. Finally, we thought it was over. We were wrong. A month later, Douglas got out on early release. Some technicality his lawyer found. The first thing he did was file a civil suit against me, Marcus' mom, and our center. He claimed defamation, emotional distress, and loss of income. He demanded $3 million. The lawsuit was garbage, but we still had to respond. Our lawyer said fighting it would cost at least $50,000 in legal fees, money we didn't have. We'd put everything into the center. But then something beautiful happened. The families started a legal defense fund. They organized bake sales, car washes, online crowdfunding. Local businesses donated. In 2 weeks they raised $60,000. But Douglas had more tricks. He started showing up at the center during drop-off and pick-up times. He'd stand on the public sidewalk just outside the restraining order distance taking photos and videos of families. He'd shout questions at parents about their children's disabilities. Some families started using the back entrance to avoid him. One morning, Timothy's mom lost it. Douglas had followed her to her car, demanding to know if she'd lied in court. She pepper-sprayed him. He called the police and tried to press charges, but Alexander had been recording everything. The video showed Douglas aggressively pursuing her while she repeatedly asked him to stop. The police arrested Douglas instead for harassment. While Douglas sat in jail, we discovered something interesting. Nancy had been digging into property records. The building that housed the old Bright Horizon Center, Douglas owned it through a shell company. He'd been charging his sister triple market rent. When the center closed, he'd lost his biggest income source. No wonder he was desperate. We gave this information to the FBI agent investigating the financial fraud. Turns out Douglas had been evading taxes on that income for years. He'd also been using the building for insurance fraud, claiming damages that never happened. The feds added tax evasion and insurance fraud to his charges. He was looking at another 10 years minimum. But before his trial, Douglas tried one last thing. He contacted my previous employer, the school district that fired me. He convinced them to release my personnel file publicly, claiming public interest. The file contained the performance reviews that called me too emotional and unable to maintain professional boundaries. Local news picked it up. For a day I was trending on social media, but not how Douglas expected. Teachers started sharing their own stories of being fired for caring too much. Parents posted about educators who'd made a difference by being too emotional. The hashtag #TooEmotionalTeacher went viral. Someone even made t-shirts. I bought 5. The publicity actually helped us. Applications tripled, donations poured in. A foundation that supported special needs programs gave us a $100,000 grant. We were able to hire 3 more teachers and expand our services. We added speech therapy, occupational therapy, and music therapy. Douglas's trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. He got 12 years federal time, no possibility of early release. The judge called him a predator who used his position to enable child abuse for profit. He was also ordered to pay restitution to all the families his sister had defrauded, not that he had any money left after legal fees. With both Lauren and Douglas locked up for the foreseeable future, things finally calmed down. We focused on what mattered, the kids. Our transparent model was getting attention from other states. I was invited to speak at conferences about preventing abuse in special needs settings. Marcus's mom and I finished our book. A major publisher picked it up. The book tour was surreal. Parents would come up crying, saying our story gave them courage to speak up about their own concerns. Educators asked how to implement observation policies. State legislators invited us to testify about mandatory reporting laws. Real change was happening. But the best part was always coming home to our center, seeing Marcus help newer kids learn the communication system he'd mastered, watching Timothy lead circle time with confidence, seeing Emma's parents cry happy tears when she read her first sentence. These moments made everything worth it. 1 year after Douglas's conviction, we got unexpected news. Lauren had died in prison. Heart attack. They said she was 43. I didn't feel happy or sad, just empty. All that brilliance and potential wasted on hurting children. Her death meant the families would never get full restitution, but most said they'd gotten something better, justice and a safe place for their kids. We held a staff meeting to discuss how to tell the children. Some had trauma related to her. Others didn't remember her at all. We decided to be honest but simple if asked. The bad person who hurt them couldn't hurt anyone anymore. We were safe. We were together. That was what mattered. 6 months later, I got an unexpected visitor. A woman named Jessie who introduced herself as Lauren's sister, the real sister, alive and horrified by what had been done in her name. She'd been living abroad for years, teaching special education in rural communities. She'd had no idea Lauren had stolen her identity until the trial made international news. Jessie was everything Lauren wasn't: kind, humble, genuinely interested in the children's well-being. She asked if she could volunteer at the center. She wanted to do something positive to counter all the pain her sister had caused. I was hesitant, but the board voted to give her a chance. She started by organizing our supply closet and reading stories at circle time. The kids loved her immediately. She had the same gift Lauren had possessed, that natural ability to connect with special needs children, but she used it to help, not hurt. Within months, she was one of our best volunteers. She even went back to school to get proper certification in special education. Today marks 5 years since that day at the Mall. Our little strip mall center has grown into a full campus. We have 52 students, 12 teachers and 6 therapists. Every room has observation windows. Parents are partners in everything we do. We've never had a single incident of abuse. Marcus is in 5th grade now, fully mainstreamed with minimal support. He wants to be a teacher like me. Timothy is thriving in a specialized art program. Emma reads at grade level and wants to be a doctor. All the kids from those dark days have found their paths forward. I still get emotional sometimes when a new family comes in terrified and exhausted. I remember being that desperate myself. When a child makes a breakthrough, I think about all the breakthroughs Lauren stole from other kids. When parents thank me, I remember the parents who trusted the wrong person. But mostly I feel grateful. Grateful I stopped at that Mall. Grateful for Marcus' mom and her courage. Grateful for every family who stood up against intimidation and harassment. Grateful for second chances and the opportunity to build something better from the ashes of something terrible. Last month, the state adopted our transparency protocols as recommended practice for all special needs centers. They're calling it the Bright Horizons Law, which is ironic but fitting. Lauren's center name will forever be associated with protecting children from people like her. I think that's the best revenge possible. We're opening a second location next year. The waiting list is over 100 families. Marcus' mom will run it while I stay at the original site. We're also launching an online training program for other centers. The goal is simple: no child should ever suffer in silence again. Sometimes reporters still call wanting to rehash the scandal. I usually decline. That story's been told. The story I want to tell now is about hope and healing and the incredible resilience of children, about parents who never give up, about communities that come together to protect their most vulnerable. Next week is Marcus' graduation from elementary school. He's giving a speech about overcoming challenges. He asked me to sit in the front row. His mom and I will definitely cry. Alexander, the security guard, already bought extra tissues. Even Gary admits he'll probably get emotional. Looking at my calendar, it's completely full. IEP meetings, parent conferences, staff training, board meetings, but also birthday parties, graduation ceremonies, holiday concerts, the good stuff that makes all the hard stuff worthwhile. The stuff Lauren never understood was the real reward of this work. My phone just buzzed. A text from Timothy's mom with a video of him teaching his little sister sign language. The caption says, "Thank you for saving our family." I screenshot it and add it to my folder of happy moments, the folder that reminds me why I do this on the hardest days. Tomorrow we're hosting an open house for prospective families. I'll tell them about our philosophy and programs. I'll show them our safety protocols and transparency policies. But mostly I'll tell them about the kids, about their strength and potential, about what's possible when children are heard and believed and protected. That's the real story here, not the scandal or the trials or the drama, just a bunch of kids who deserved better. And the adults who finally made sure they got it. Kids who found their voices and used them to change the world, one communication board at a time.
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.